All right, let's kick off this deep dive and dive deep we shall into the Fermi Paradox. You know, the one that asks, where are all the aliens already? It's a question that really gets you thinking, right? Because on the one hand, we've got all these signs, all this evidence pointing to the idea that life, should be all over the universe. But then on the other, we're staring out into this vast cosmic silence. So today, we're going to try to unpack that silence a little bit, explore some of the possible explanations, and maybe, just maybe, leave you with even more questions than answers.
Well, I think a good place to start is with the sheer scale of the problem. Because when we talk about alien life, we're not just talking about our little corner of the galaxy, right? We're talking about the entire Milky Way. And that's billions, billions with a B of stars, many of which are way older, much more stable than our own sun.
Okay, billions of stars. That's kind of hard to even imagine, isn't it? Like trying to count, I don't know, all the grains of sand on every beach on Earth. And we know that a lot of these stars, they have planets orbiting them, right? So even if, let's say, even if just a teeny tiny fraction of those planets are habitable, we're still talking about a mind-boggling number of places where life could exist.
Exactly. And that's what makes the paradox so perplexing, right?
Mhm.
Because if even a tiny fraction of those habitable planets actually developed life, and then a smaller fraction of those developed intelligent life, like, life capable of space travel, or at least sending out some sort of signal, well, the galaxy should be buzzing, shouldn't it? There should be some sign, some evidence, something.
But nothing. Silence. So how did we even start thinking about this paradox in the first place? Was it some, I don't know, groundbreaking scientific study or...
Actually, no, not at all. It was, believe it or not, just a casual lunchtime conversation that really got the ball rolling. Back in 1950, a bunch of physicists at Los Alamos National Laboratory, they were chatting about UFO sightings and faster-than-light travel, typical lunch break stuff.
Sounds like my kind of lunch break.
Well, Enrico Fermi, brilliant physicist, he just suddenly blurts out, "Where is everybody?" Simple question. Almost offhand, like he was asking about the salt shaker or something. But that question, it cut to the heart of the issue. If this universe is as vast and as old as we think it is, and if the potential for life is so high, then, well, why haven't we met anyone yet?
And that simple question, just thrown out there at lunch, sparked decades of debate and speculation. And I guess that's where the famous Drake equation comes in, right? The one that tries to calculate, well, estimate the number of detectable civilizations out there.
Yeah, exactly. The Drake equation, it's a way of trying to break down this huge problem into smaller, more manageable chunks. It takes into account things like how fast stars are forming, how many planets there are per star, how many of those planets are habitable, then, the likelihood of life actually popping up on a habitable planet, the chances of that life becoming intelligent, developing technology that we could detect from far, far away, and of course, how long those civilizations actually stick around.
Okay, so it's like a cosmic recipe. You throw in all these ingredients, mix it up, and out pops a number, an estimate of how many alien civilizations are out there waving hello. Sounds simple enough, but I'm guessing there's a catch.
Oh, there's definitely a catch. The problem is we don't actually know the values for a lot of those ingredients.
Yeah.
Take the likelihood of life arising on a habitable planet, for instance. We only have one data point for that, Earth.
Right, so we're basing our calculations on a sample size of one. Not exactly the most scientific method, is it?
It's more of a thought experiment than a precise calculation, to be honest. It helps us think about the problem in a structured way, identify the key factors that might influence whether or not we're alone. But the truth is, there's a lot of uncertainty. We can tweak those variables in the equation, get wildly different results, which really just highlights how much we still don't know.
Okay, starting to see why this Fermi paradox is such a head-scratcher. So much of it depends on things we can't really measure or even fully understand yet. But let's dive into some of those possible explanations for this cosmic silence, shall we? One that I always find fascinating is the great filter. This idea that there's some massive hurdle, some challenge that prevents most life from reaching those really advanced stages.
Ah, yes, the great filter. It's a thought-provoking concept, isn't it? Because it makes you wonder, where is that filter? Is it behind us, meaning we already jumped over the biggest hurdle? Or is it ahead of us, waiting to, well, wipe us out before we reach our full potential?
Yeah, that's a bit sobering to think about. So what are some of the possible filters that people have come up with? I remember reading about this algae versus alumni problem, which I thought was a clever way of putting it.
Oh, that's a good one. It highlights one potential filter, which is that jump from simple life to complex, intelligent life. We might find microbial life out there on other planets, like algae, but it's a whole other ball game to find a civilization. A society that builds things, communicates, leaves behind traces that we can detect across the vastness of space.
So the great filter, it could be anything from that initial spark of life, the development of complex cells, the evolution of intelligence, the ability to create technology, maybe even something we haven't even thought of yet. Or maybe, and this is a scary thought, it's the tendency for intelligent life to, well, wipe itself out.
It's certainly a possibility we can't ignore, can we? I mean, we've already developed weapons that could destroy ourselves many times over. And let's not forget about climate change and resource depletion and all the other challenges we're facing. What if these are common problems for any intelligent species that reaches a certain level of development?
Okay, now that is a chilling thought. It's like, the very traits that make us intelligent, our curiosity, our ambition, our desire to innovate, maybe those are the very things that ultimately lead to our downfall.
It's a paradox within a paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's a question that we're going to have to grapple with as we continue to explore the Fermi Paradox.
Definitely a lot to think about. But speaking of unsettling possibilities, what about the idea of, well, grabby aliens? The ones that go around conquering and colonizing everything they come across. Could it be that the silence we're hearing is because the galaxy is a cosmic battleground where only the strongest survive?
That's an idea that's been explored a lot in science fiction, that's for sure. The dark forest analogy is a good example. Every civilization is hiding, afraid to make a sound because they know that the first one to reveal their location becomes a target.
Yikes. So the universe isn't a welcoming party, it's more like a deadly game of hide and seek. Okay, I get why science fiction writers love that idea. It's definitely dramatic. But is there any reason to believe that alien civilizations would actually be that hostile?
It's hard to say, really. I mean, we only have ourselves to go on, and let's face it, we haven't always been the friendliest species ourselves. It's easy to project our own history and tendencies onto others, but we have to be careful about assuming that alien civilizations would be driven by the same motivations or fears.
Right, they could be completely different from us in ways we can't even imagine. I guess we just don't know.
We don't, but it's a possibility we can't entirely rule out. And it does make you think about the potential dangers of advanced technology, doesn't it?
This is getting pretty heavy. Maybe we need to explore some lighter explanations before we completely lose hope in a friendly universe.
So what about the zoo hypothesis? This is the one where the aliens are out there, they know about us, but they're intentionally avoiding contact, right? Like we're some kind of protected species in a galactic nature reserve.
That's one way to look at it. The idea is that maybe these advanced civilizations are watching us from a distance, letting us develop naturally without interference.
But wouldn't that be kind of, I don't know, arrogant of them to assume they know what's best for us? It seems a little condescending, even if their intentions are good.
You're not wrong. It's a hypothesis that rests on a lot of assumptions about how alien civilizations might think and behave. And it does raise a pretty big question. If there are lots of advanced civilizations out there, wouldn't at least one of them have broken the rules of this galactic zoo by now?
Unless there are consequences for breaking the rules. Maybe they have some kind of galactic council that enforces a strict no-contact policy. Now that's an intriguing thought, isn't it? Maybe there's a prime directive of sorts, like in Star Trek. Or maybe they have some kind of communication network that we haven't detected yet, and they're all coordinating their actions.
Okay, now we're getting into some serious conspiracy theory territory. I love it. But let's move on to something a bit different. What if, and this is an idea that I find both fascinating and a little terrifying, what if these advanced civilizations have simply moved beyond physical exploration altogether? What if they're completely immersed in virtual worlds of their own creation?
That's a hypothesis that's gaining traction these days for sure, especially with all the advancements in virtual and augmented reality. I mean, if you could create any world you wanted, a world without limits, would you really be that interested in exploring the cold, hard reality of space?
So we're looking for aliens who might have treated spaceships for VR headsets. That's a pretty wild thought. But it does raise the question, how would we ever detect them if that's the case? And would they even be interested in interacting with a species that's still, stuck in the physical world?
Those are some of the challenges that the virtual reality hypothesis presents, for sure. It suggests that our current methods of searching for extraterrestrial intelligence might be completely off the mark. We're listening for radio signals while they're communicating through some kind of technology that we haven't even dreamed of yet.
So maybe the silence we're hearing is actually the hum of 1 trillion alien civilizations lost in their own virtual realities. That's a pretty mind-blowing thought.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder if maybe, just maybe, the answer to the Fermi paradox is right in front of us, hidden in plain sight, but we just don't have the right tools or the right mindset to see it.
Oh, okay. Now that's a cliffhanger if I've ever heard one. I guess we'll have to wait for the next part of our deep dive to explore those possibilities further.
We'll pick up right where we left off next time, so stay tuned. Welcome back to our deep dive into the Fermi Paradox. Before the break, we were, pondering the possibility of advanced civilizations just sort of slipping into these virtual worlds, leaving the physical universe behind. But what if the answer to the Fermi Paradox is, well, much simpler? What if it's not about aliens at all, but about us? What if Earth is truly one of a kind, a rare gem in a vast and otherwise, well, empty universe?
You're talking about the rare Earth hypothesis, right? The idea that the conditions that led to life here on Earth, they're so specific, so unlikely to be replicated anywhere else. Kind of a humbling thought, but also, I don't know, a little bit lonely.
It really challenges the Copernican principle, that idea that there's nothing special about our place in the universe. The rare Earth hypothesis. It suggests that maybe Earth is the exception, not the rule. Think about it. Our distance from the sun, the moon, the composition of our atmosphere, the magnetic field that protects us from all that harmful radiation. Maybe this combination of factors, it's just incredibly rare, virtually impossible to duplicate elsewhere.
So it's not enough to just find habitable planets, right? It's about finding planets that have that perfect recipe for life as we know it to emerge and then evolve into, well, intelligent beings like us.
Exactly. Life on Earth has had billions of years to develop, and yet we only have one species that's built spaceships and radio telescopes. If intelligence were a common outcome of evolution, shouldn't we expect to see more of it, even here on our own planet?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we share this planet with millions of other species, and some of them are incredibly complex and adaptable, but none of them are writing poetry or building rockets. So maybe we're not just looking for a needle in a haystack. We're looking for a very specific needle that only exists in one very particular haystack.
And even if there are other intelligent species out there, maybe they just haven't reached our level of technological sophistication yet. Imagine trying to detect a civilization that's still in the Stone Age. Their signals would be too faint, too localized, for us to pick up across interstellar distances.
So it's possible that we're surrounded by alien civilizations, but there's just not advanced enough for us to know about it. Like, they haven't invented the radio yet, so they can't hear our broadcasts, and we can't hear theirs.
Exactly. It's like trying to have a conversation with someone who doesn't speak your language.
And then there's the possibility that, well, maybe they're out there, and they are technologically advanced, but their technology is so different from ours that we wouldn't even recognize it as technology.
That's another intriguing possibility, isn't it? Their biology, their senses, their whole way of understanding the universe could be so alien to us that we wouldn't even recognize them as intelligent.
It's like we're looking for fish in the ocean, but maybe they're not fish at all. Maybe they're some kind of creature that we can't even comprehend.
And their communication? Who knows what form that might take? We're listening for radio waves, but maybe they're communicating through something completely different.
Something we haven't even discovered yet.
Exactly. Which brings us to another possibility, and it's not a particularly cheerful one. What if intelligent life is inherently self-destructive? What if the reason we haven't encountered any other civilizations is because they all reach a certain point, a certain level of technology, and then, well, they wipe themselves out?
Okay, back to the great filter idea. But this time, it's not some external force that wipes them out, it's their own actions.
Exactly. Look at us. We've developed weapons that could destroy all life on Earth many times over. We're struggling with climate change, resource depletion, political instability. What if these are universal problems for intelligent species? What if the very things that make us intelligent, our curiosity, our drive to innovate, also make us prone to self-destruction?
That's a scary thought. And it feels even more relevant today, with all the talk about artificial intelligence and genetic engineering and all these powerful new technologies that we're developing.
We're like kids playing with matches. We have this incredible power, but we haven't necessarily learned how to use it responsibly.
So the Fermi Paradox, it's not just about aliens, it's about us too. It's about the choices we make and the future we're creating.
It forces us to confront some pretty fundamental questions about our own nature and our place in the universe.
Okay, so we've explored the possibility that Earth might be rare, that intelligent life might be self-destructive, and that other civilizations might be out there, but just beyond our reach, technologically or maybe even conceptually. Are there any other explanations we should consider?
Oh, there are plenty more. For example, what if the problem isn't finding alien civilizations, but attracting their attention? What if we're just not shouting loud enough?
So we're listening for their signals, but are we doing a good job of sending our own?
That's a key question. We've been broadcasting radio signals into space for about a century, but is that enough? Are we transmitting on the right frequencies, using the right kind of signals? Maybe our signals are just too faint, too random to be noticed against the background noise of the universe.
It's like trying to get someone's attention in a crowded room. You might be waving your arms and shouting, but if you're not speaking their language, they might not even notice you're there.
Exactly. So maybe we need to be more strategic about how we announce our presence to the cosmos. But then that raises another question. Do we really want to attract attention?
Right. What if the universe is a dangerous place? And the last thing we want to do is advertise our location to potentially hostile aliens.
It's a risk, for sure. And it brings us back to that dark forest scenario we talked about earlier. Maybe the best strategy for survival is to stay quiet, to blend in.
So the Fermi Paradox becomes this cosmic game of hide and seek where the stakes are, well, the survival of our species.
It's a chilling thought, but it's one that we can't afford to ignore.
Okay, so we have to be careful about what we say and how we say it. But what if, and this is another one of those ideas that I find both intriguing and a little unsettling, what if the aliens are already here observing us, but they're just choosing not to reveal themselves?
The zoo hypothesis, it always comes back, doesn't it?
I guess it makes sense. I mean, it's a possibility that we can't completely rule out, but it does raise some uncomfortable questions, doesn't it?
It does.
Hmm.
It makes you wonder about their motives, their ethics. Why would they choose to observe us without making contact?
Maybe they're studying us, trying to understand us.
Or maybe they're waiting for us to reach a certain level of development before they decide to, say hello.
It's like we're in some kind of cosmic reality show. And the aliens are the producers watching us from behind the scenes, waiting to see what we'll do next.
It's an interesting analogy. But it does raise the question, what are we waiting for?
Yeah.
What do we need to do to pass this cosmic test?
I wish I knew. But what if the answer is much simpler than all of this? What if the reason we haven't encountered alien life is simply because we haven't been looking in the right places or listening in the right way?
That's certainly a possibility. Our technology is constantly evolving. Our understanding of the universe is always expanding. It's possible that we're just missing the signals, or maybe we're not even looking for the right kind of signals.
It's like trying to tune into a radio station when you don't know the frequency. You could be surrounded by music, but all you hear is static.
A perfect analogy. Maybe we need to develop new instruments, new ways of thinking about the problem. Maybe we need to be more open to the possibility that alien life might be very different from what we expect.
Okay, so we need to be more creative, more open-minded. This is definitely making my head spin. We've covered a lot of ground in this segment. From the possibility of a rare Earth to the idea of a universe where civilizations are constantly hiding from each other, it's been quite a journey.
And we're not done yet. In the next segment, we're going to delve into some even more mind-boggling possibilities, including the idea that maybe, just maybe, alien life is closer than we think.
Welcome back to our final dive into the Fermi Paradox. And, we've explored so many possibilities, so many ideas about where everyone else might be. But there's one that always kind of tickles that, sci-fi part of my brain, the idea that maybe, just maybe, they're already here, like right here on Earth watching us. I know it sounds like something out of a movie, but is there any actual scientific basis for that idea, for aliens being among us?
Well, you're not alone in finding that idea intriguing, that's for sure. And from a purely logical standpoint, it's certainly possible. I mean, if we're talking about a civilization that's technologically way ahead of us, their presence could easily go undetected, right? Imagine they've mastered nanotechnology, genetic engineering, heck, maybe even forms of energy manipulation that we haven't even dreamt of. They could blend in, observe us, and we'd be none the wiser.
So they could be, right under our noses and we wouldn't even know it? That's both kind of cool and kind of creepy, but shouldn't there be some kind of evidence, some clue that they're here?
That's where things get tricky, because our search for alien intelligence, it's often limited by our own understanding of technology, by what we consider to be evidence. We tend to look for radio signals, light patterns, maybe some giant structure out in space. But what if their technology operates on principles that we haven't even discovered yet? What if their communication, their very presence, is so subtle that it slips past our instruments, past our understanding?
It's like we're trying to read a message written in invisible ink, but we don't know the secret to revealing it. Maybe it's right there in front of us, but we can't see it.
Yeah.
It really makes you wonder if we're even asking the right questions, Maybe the Fermi paradox isn't so much about where is everybody, but more about how could we possibly recognize them if they're already here?
Now, that's a question that really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It challenges us to think outside the box, to expand our definition of what alien life might look like, how it might interact with our world. I mean, think about all those unexplained phenomena that we've observed over the years, strange lights in the sky, those weird signals that pop up on our instruments. What if those are actually glimpses of their presence, but we're not interpreting them correctly because we're so stuck in our own limited way of thinking?
Okay, yeah, that's pretty mind-blowing. So maybe instead of looking for little green men in flying saucers, we should be looking for something, well, something completely different, something we might not even recognize at first.
It certainly makes the search for extraterrestrial intelligence a lot more challenging, but also a lot more exciting. But let's shift gears for a moment. We've been talking a lot about listening, about trying to detect signals from other civilizations. But what about sending out our own signals? Are we doing enough to announce our presence to the cosmos?
That's the SETI paradox, right? We've been beaming radio signals out into space for a while now, but are we shouting loud enough? And are we even speaking a language that anyone else would understand?
Those are the big questions, aren't they? Our signals, they might be too faint to reach anyone, or maybe they're just, meaningless to an alien intelligence.
Like, imagine trying to have a conversation with someone who doesn't speak your language. You could be yelling and waving your arms, but all they hear is noise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even if our signals are strong enough, and even if they are comprehensible, there's still that question of, do we really want to be shouting our location to the entire universe?
Right, because what if? What if it's not a friendly universe out there? What if attracting attention is the last thing we want to do?
It's a dilemma, for sure. It highlights the ethical considerations that are involved in this whole search for extraterrestrial intelligence.
Mm.
The Fermi Paradox, it's not just a scientific puzzle, it's also a philosophical one. It makes us think about the potential consequences of our actions, about the responsibility we have, not just to ourselves, but to all of humanity and maybe even to all life on Earth.
Wow, this deep dive has really it's been a journey. We've explored so many possibilities, some of them hopeful, some of them pretty scary, and some that they just make your head spin. But one thing's for sure, the Fermi paradox. It's more than just a scientific puzzle. It's a reflection on who we are, where we fit in, and what it even means to be intelligent.
And I think that's the most important takeaway from all of this. The Fermi Paradox, it forces us to question our assumptions, to broaden our perspectives, to approach the unknown with a healthy mix of curiosity and caution. The universe is vast, it's mysterious, and we're just beginning to explore it.
So what's the final verdict? Where is everybody?
Well, if this deep dive has taught us anything, it's that we don't have a definitive answer to that question. And maybe that's okay. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence, it's a journey, not a destination. It's about the questions we ask, the discoveries we make along the way, and the possibilities that we open up.
I like that. So keep those minds curious, keep looking up at the stars, and who knows, maybe one day one of you listening will be the one to finally crack the code of the Fermi paradox. And until then, keep exploring.